Wicked's second movie is called Wicked for Good, putting an emphasis on a particular word. This word shows up everywhere in both acts of the show, and it's one that both women wrestle with the entire time. We've talked about Glinda's relationship to the word and idea of good. Now let's talk about Elphaba's. As narrative foils, appropriately, Elphaba's relationship with good is almost a perfect inverse of Glinda's. Where Glinda's journey is largely external, people calling her good and her coasting by on their praise, Elphaba's journey is largely internal. She more frequently and outwardly ponders the nature of what exactly makes something good. Where comments towards Glinda often have to do with her supposedly good nature, Elphaba's more often have to do with behavior. Where Glinda's statements usually come from others and are definitive,
"You're good.
You are so good."
Elphaba's more often come from herself and are uncertain, actively questioning the definitions provided to her.
You'll be making good.
The first time that someone talks about good to Elphaba, it's Morrible. There is so much in this exchange. Firstly, the good that Morrible is talking about means working with the wizard. She's not ambiguous about this. As we know, this won't be about actual good deeds the way Elphaba sees them, as in making the world more fair, but becoming a tool for a wizard who lacks magic of his own. So, right away, this definition from Morrible is three things: an appeal to authority, at odds with Elphaba's own values, and fundamentally disingenuous. Then, Elphaba herself initially borrows Morrible's own words.
So I'll make
which are vague about Elphaba's ultimate role, but also betray her intent. Morrible says, make good, which is a peculiar way to phrase it. Not doing good, but making it. This could just be a quirk of Aussian phrasing, but what else? The word make suggests creating a product of some kind, something that can be used. Compare this to doing good, which emphasizes the action. We certainly could be putting too much weight into semantics, but also every word here is a choice. And this idea of good as a product aligns exactly with the role that Morrible envisions for Elphaba, leveraging her power for Morrible and the wizard's ambitions, which are selfish at best and violent at worst. We then also get some insight into how Elphaba sees all of this. When Elphaba echoes the line, she phrases it as a conditional statement. X will happen if I make good, so I'll make good. The phrasing here isn't about doing or making good for the sake of it. It's about meeting the wizard, and making good is simply the means towards that end. Perhaps, we might even say, seeking attention over seeking good. But, you know what? What's inherently wrong with that? What's inherently wrong with seeking attention? So far, Elphaba's gotten plenty of attention, just not the good kind. And now, someone is saying that she is actually super cool and uniquely valuable, and she's 18 years old. Can we really fault her all that much for getting extremely hyped about this idea? Finally getting positive, rewarding attention from a notable and respected adult in her life? So, although this colors Elphaba's motivations in this scene, it doesn't damn her as a character, and certainly not her morality. Then, as she goes on, we suddenly see a shift in Elphaba's definition of good. Again, Elphaba is borrowing words, but now instead of making good, she's talking about her own nature.
Shouldn't a girl who's so good inside have a matching exterior?
This kind of positive self-talk is kind of beautiful at this juncture, because pretty much the only feedback she's ever gotten is that she's an embarrassment and a mess. But she cares about others, about truth, about fairness. She's a loving sister. She's compassionate. She's capable of forgiveness towards both Glinda and Fiyero after they're initially unkind. These are the qualities that she'd categorize as good, and most of us would agree. Elphaba is a good person, and she knows it. And there's something even more complex happening here. Elphaba is contrasting the good of her character with something not good on the outside, as though one is the opposite of the other. But it's not about value, it's about perception. Because it's not that her green exterior is malicious, it's that it's unacceptable. Therefore, good here is being used to conflate two things: her inner goodness with her exterior, which by virtue of being ugly by Ozian standards, doesn't match. Elphaba here is expressing the pressure of the Ozian belief that things that are morally good must look conventionally acceptable as well as the implication that the opposite must also be true. Things that look good are things that are good. And yet, while Elphaba seems to accept the first part of this proposition and wants to be de-greenified because of it, she does not accept the second. Glinda and Fiyero are the ideal of conventional perfection, and she's immediately repulsed by both of them on sight because of it. Meaning, Elphaba is applying different rules for herself and for others. She, on some level, knows that the Ozian standard is BS, but she can't help but apply it to herself because she's experienced it as truth. Because her worry is twofold. Not just that she's wrong for her appearance, but that there's something innately wrong with her as a person. When given the chance to elaborate, Elphaba specifies that it's not her actions that are the problem.
I don't cause commotions, I am one.
It's her nature. She emphasizes the difference. Actions can be changed. Nature can't. But if the wizard, supposedly endowed with perfect power and knowledge, endorses her, it'll disprove her greatest fear, that she's exceptionally terrible. But also, it might confirm her greatest hope, that she's exceptionally special. This illuminates one of Elphaba's most intriguing traits. When she's not in the depths of self-hate, she even seems to think of herself as, in some ways, above her peers.
And one day he'll say to me, Elphaba, a girl who is so superior. Do not match them in Glinda.
And, in some ways, she's not wrong. She's certainly more morally complex than many of her peers, and also does have magic powers that they don't. And even though it seems like a contradiction, Elphaba sometimes considering herself actually superior to others, and then uniquely terrible,
He has a good reason. It's my fault.
they're both expressions of the same thing. Elphaba considering herself uniquely responsible, putting a disproportionate burden on her own shoulders. We'll put a pin in this one.
If it's so good for him, why is he trembling?
This is another case of borrowing someone else's words in what is a catalyzing moment for Elphaba. Here, even though she's holding on to the dream of meeting the wizard, she openly challenges one of his officials and policies and their definition of good. She, pretty justifiably, questions the morality of doing classroom experiments on a caged lion cub, which, to be clear, in this world is equivalent to a person, to which the wizard asset responds that it's for the animal's own good. Is this a knowing lie, or does the man actually believe what he's saying? If he does, it's that kind of paternalistic rhetoric that's used to justify all sorts of harm in the name of order. As though exerting control and denying agency to someone is really for their benefit. Animals shouldn't be allowed agency because they wouldn't know how to handle it. Is this a bit heavy-handed? Sure. Regardless, this is Elphaba witnessing the contradiction herself between Oz's definition of good as institutional order and what she sees with her own eyes. And when it comes down to which to believe, it's really no contest for her. Even though she still believes in the wizard enough to meet with him after this, the reveal of his true motivation overrides any desire she had to impress him. We get a time jump, during which Elphaba has been acting based on her own morals. At the top of Act 2, we meet a very changed Elphaba. And from this point on, something significant happens. She's not just questioning other people's definitions of good, she's questioning her own.
And finally from these powers something good.
The language she chooses here is curious, because we're led to understand, in between defying gravity and this moment, she's been helping animals this whole time. Even though the show does kind of turn this plot into a backdrop, so we don't really see much of it. And presumably, Elphaba's been using her powers for this altruistic work. And yet, what she says is, finally, from these powers, something good, suggesting that this is the first time that Elphaba believes her powers have actually helped someone. The ambiguity here opens up different potential readings. It could just be a writing oversight, in line with the neglect of the activism plotline as a whole. Or maybe it is intentional, and we're meant to understand that even when Elphaba used her powers altruistically, there was always some kind of painful side effect. Hi, this is me after having seen the second film. I actually saw it twice just to make sure that I remembered everything. And so I wanted to speak to some of the changes that they made. So the film addresses this lapse in the animal activism story almost immediately, with a scene of Elphaba using her magic to free imprisoned animals that are forced to build the Yellow Brick Road. And while this scene that they added is great in expanding that storyline, it does complicate Elphaba's statement here.
And finally, from these powers, something good.
Most of Nessa's lines here are cut and replaced with, instead of talking about her wheelchair, wanting to feel as happy as she did at Ozdust. Elphaba does a spell to make her fly, with some inspiration from the Grimoire that almost seems to be acting on its own accord. By saying what she says, presumably, Elphaba sees her ability to make her sister fly as more proof of good than her freeing enslaved animals? It lands a little bit strangely. We can reconcile it, though, by taking Elphaba's statement to mean that she still feels like she hasn't accomplished enough against the wizard, and that, so far, no response to her magic has even come close to Nessa, her baby sister's big gleaming smile here. Intent is a key theme here. Yes, her previous uses of magic often had some unintended consequence. However, it's never been her powers specifically which have harmed someone, but the way that they were being channeled. She only hurt the monkeys because she was tricked into using a hurtful spell, thinking that she was granting Chistery's wish. She only puppeted the students because she was angry on behalf of the lion cub. When she magicked Nessa's wheelchair out of Morable's, or in the film, Miss Coddle's hands, it was out of love. But there's a common theme here, because, crucially, in all these cases, her magic was overriding someone else's agency. So it's significant that here, the spell she's doing seems to be returning agency to Nessa, or at least attempting to. This is corroborated by the lyrics, which paint Nessa as decisively resentful of being in a wheelchair and of depending on Elphaba. Still, Elphaba is doing a spell that directly impacts someone's body without warning or full consent. She launches into the spell without explaining to Nessa what she's doing, and Nessa is visibly taken aback. And this exposes something of an understated flaw of Elphaba's that we've seen from the beginning. In tandem with her occasional sense of superiority, she can be self-assured to a fault.
Do you ever let anyone else talk?
Often thinking and acting as though she knows best. This scene is also a cargo ship full of worms, as much of Nessa's storyline is. Much like how Elphaba herself is written in these scenes, the show's attitude towards Nessa can end up feeling very patronizing, not helped by lines like,
All of my life I've depended on you and this hideous chair with wheels.
"Hi, it's me editing again." This scene is significantly changed. The scene is no longer about Nessa's ability to walk, but about her feeling happy. Like we said before, Elphaba instead does a spell to make her fly. Nessa is still initially taken aback, like in the stage show, but then is visibly happy with the result. The comments that I made about Elphaba's magic encroaching on people's bodies, nonetheless, remains.
No good deed goes unpunished.
This is the best song in the show, and this is what it all really comes down to. The song, interestingly, also expresses very similar ideas and music as Made of Stone from Hunchback, incidentally. Elphaba undergoes an entire journey within this song, and her thought process here, as she holds herself accountable for the disaster in front of her, is fascinating. Because, objectively, her powers save Fiero's life. The only reason he was hurt is because other people harmed him. Yes, he gets scarecrowed, but it's not like that was an intention of hers, and he explicitly does not hold this against her. Her intention was to spare him pain, and she succeeded. So, Elphaba is posing this question to herself in a moment of genuine reflection, but she's also in a really shitty headspace, having immediately suffered 3 huge blows: finding Dilliman speechless, the loss of her sister, and Fiero's torture. And this is on top of several years of exhausting persecution at the hands of the wizard. And the result of this exasperation is Elphaba unfairly blaming herself wholesale. But her attitude here is also completely in character, consistent with the Elphaba who, well into her young adulthood, blames herself for her mother's death. Not the milk flowers, not her father, herself for daring to be born wrong. Guilt is Elphaba's earliest friend, and it's by her side this whole song. Elphaba's guilt and sense of superiority aren't contradictions, they're 2 sides of the exact same coin. So, what do we make of her question?
Is it really seeking good, or just seeking attention? Is that all the needs are looked after that I'm school die?
First off, to counter Elphaba's own self-doubt, we did see her flatly reject attention in Wonderful in favor of seeking good. So again, she is being a little heavily self-critical here, even though we do get why. Nonetheless, let's try to figure out what she's really asking. She seems to be directly referencing Morable's early appeal to her and her pursuit of good to meet the wizard. There, she clearly was seeking good, as in positive change, and also attention.
All of us has to love you, and by the wizard you're acclaimed.
But here's the thing, like we said before, there's nothing inherently wrong with this, especially for someone like Elphaba, who has been starved of positive attention her whole life, given negative attention for all the wrong reasons, and for something outside of her control. So when she does get recognition from authority figures, it feels good, and can we blame her? So maybe she was seeking attention. So, she was a young girl punished for existing most of her life. So, at least on our end, we can put that to bed. But also, it's been years since this interaction. So we might infer that Elphaba is also wondering about her motivations for more recent actions. It's a little peculiar on the face of it. She wonders if she's been seeking attention, not good, by making herself a persecuted state pariah. Maybe she's thinking irrationally. Or maybe she's asking herself a harder question. If she prevails against the wizard, would she want recognition and attention as a hero? Is that even some small part of why she's doing all this? This possibility is both in character and incredibly juicy. We've known from the start that even though she's able to live without it, Elphaba does crave acceptance and approval. It's why she was still enticed by the wizard's offer in Wonderful. Maybe, there, she thought she could gain the approval of Oz, then expose the wizard, and set things right. And this wouldn't be an unfounded belief, because Elphaba has significant facts on her side. She knows she's good, she knows she's right, and she knows she's powerful. She knows the wizard is a liar who could be exposed. And she still had, lest we forget, that actual vision of a celebration throughout Oz that's all to do with me. It's very possible that she's held on to a shred of hope that if she exposed the wizard, that celebration was her being welcomed as Oz's savior. That if she works hard enough, one day, they'll all see how wrong they were about her. Hi, I have another editing note. After seeing part 2, I was delighted to see that they added a line almost at the very start with Elphaba saying, "When I defeat the wizard, all of Oz will applaud how I saved them from the wizard," which emphasizes this fascinating aspect of hers.
Elphaba, a girl who is so superior.
And to be clear, her desire for recognition and even celebration that we see doesn't negate her altruism, and also her altruism doesn't negate her desire for recognition or celebration. They just coexist, and this just makes her more human and more compelling. In Wonderful, she emphasized this exact power of truth.
But it's all just smoke and mirrors.
And that's the truth.
That ultimately, that means that would prevail. But the wizard swiftly corrects her.
The truth is not a thing of fact or reason. The truth is just what everyone agrees on.
On my side, I have facts, science, and reason. All he has is fear-mongering. Oh my god, he's gonna win.
That was the first blow. And now, on top of that, she's been bludgeoned by loss after loss. Elphaba is powerful, and she is right. But by the time she gets to No Good Deed, those things haven't seemed to help her much. And if there ever was some fragile hope of salvaging something, that is quickly going up in flames. After questioning herself, she then comes to a declaration. This is maybe the most fascinating bit of character work. What does she mean when she declares,
I promise no good deed when I attempt you again, ever again.
no, really, let's figure out what she intends to not do. She says that after her litany of perceived failures, if she fails to save Fiyero, she won't try to do good ever again. Because despite her intentions, she either fails or things backfire. But why is this actually happening? Because Elphaba doesn't exist in a vacuum. Because she is affected by the situations that other people put her in. Because, for all her power, she is fighting an even bigger, intangible enemy. The distorted truth that everyone agrees on. I don't think her declaration literally means that she doesn't care anymore about helping the animals or vulnerable populations. So, what does she actually mean here? First, she's reckoning with particular language. Remember how the truth is just what everyone agrees on? So this is a surrender to Oz's version of the truth as consensus. In some ways, this is powerful. This is her deciding to spare her energy trying to fight the impossible. It's a reclamation of the word used against her. Fine, you can call me whatever you want. On the other hand, it is a defeat. The wizard's campaign against her has won. Exhausted and demoralized her so much that she apparently no longer believes in her own power to better the world. This is underscored by a musical parallel with the next song, March of the Witch Hunters. Wickedness must be punished mirrors no good deed goes unpunished. Both songs are expressing the same moral paradox, that punishment in Oz has nothing to do with justice. So part of this is a surrender to a worldview that she's opposed out of exhaustion. But there's also disproportionate guilt that she's carried her whole life. The counterpoint to Elphaba believing herself exceptionally capable is that she feels exceptionally responsible for things that, reasonably, she couldn't control. In this sense, Elphaba, in her demoralized state, sees herself as, in a way, actually deserving the title of wicked. Her intentions were to help, she had the power to do so, but people's perception of her, and the outcomes that she sees, say otherwise. While, of course, none of the three she lists are literally her fault, she is so burdened by losses at this point, and it's about how things feel. And this feels like a confirmation of what she's feared since the beginning.
I don't cause commotions, I am one.
Not just that her actions backfire, but that this is somehow proof of some deficiency of her as a person. Not that she's cursed, but that she is the curse. Still, there's something missing from this analysis. The ambiguity of the meaning of Elphaba's declaration also suffers because of Act 2's neglect of the activism plotline. As a consequence, we never see the other part of Elphaba's equation that all good deeds are pointless. As in, we never see the bulk of her fight for the animals, even though Nessa relays to us that she has flown around helping animals she's never met. Surely, those counted as good deeds, and surely not all of those backfired or were resented. The Doylist explanation for this discrepancy is that the writers simply didn't think about it. Much like the rest of Act 2, the focus of this song is more about the personal dynamics than the big picture. Of course, this is also a breakdown. This is how you think in breakdowns, with myopic tunnel vision. Regardless, there are things missing from Elphaba's equation of her good acts, whether this is absolutist thinking from a spiral or a writing oversight. Hi, me editing again. The film remedies this somewhat by opening with that scene of her freeing enslaved animals, and she does this again in the palace, where, in addition to the monkeys, she now also frees a bunch of animal political prisoners, and in both cases, she uses her magic to break the cages. These are, broadly, good deeds that remove animals from a harmful situation, and we don't necessarily see some kind of punishment or resentment that she describes for this. Though we could argue that freeing the animals in the first scene maybe led to chaos. The overall analysis of the no good deed scene here remains intact, with Elphaba largely being in an understandable spiral, regressing back to her very familiar guilt, and seeing things in absolutes. So here's the bottom line. Despite her grand statement, this isn't an Elphaba who actually decides to become cruel. On the surface, no good deed could seem to signal the start of a scorched earth Elphaba who says, fuck it, I'll resort to more extreme methods, maybe more similar to the one in the book. But that's not what we get on stage. In just a couple scenes, she entrusts her mission and life's work to Glinda to continue. Because, ultimately, her values and her morals have not changed. What has changed is that she is simply done trying to prove herself. That's the distinction. She recognizes that she's been put in a no-win scenario and stops trying to change people who she, at this point, does not believe can do so. So, for better or for worse, Elphaba's declaration of wickedness is mostly semantics, as her actual morality remains intact. Even in her breakdown, her language is mostly about what she won't do because it's harmful, rather than about embracing wickedness in practice. After this, the worst intentional thing we ever see her do is kidnap Dorothy, which, fair, fucked up to do, but the text doesn't even put a lot of stakes into that. They don't actually show us any kidnapping, and what they do show isn't taken seriously as a villainous action, and is even played as a bit of a joke.
You want to see your Aunt Em and your uncle what's his name again? Then get those shoes off your feet! Screw you, little brat! Takes a dead woman's shoes, must have been raised in a barn.
And even that mostly comes across as a grieving, distraught woman spiraling, trying to get back a token of her narratively neglected deceased sister. Understandably, this is because Elphaba and the 1939 witch are functionally different characters and vibes. Because, ultimately, Elphaba's compass is still pointing the same way. The whole reason she ostensibly gives up on doing good is because people keep getting hurt. She is still trying to mitigate harm. She just unfairly blames herself as the main cause. So, if this song isn't Elphaba rejecting her own concept of good, what is it? It's three big things. It's her surrendering to Oz's arbitrary moral definitions. It's her trying to minimize suffering by ceasing her efforts. And, maybe most significantly, it's her finally abandoning any hope of one day being accepted. As I said in the Glinda video, this song will have its own dedicated analysis, so I'll try to cover this without being too granular. On the surface, there's dissonance here. Only a couple scenes prior, Elphaba has sworn off good deeds forever, and now she's singing about being changed for good. Though, to be fair, she did say that if she couldn't save Fiyero, then she'd stop doing good. Maybe finding out that she did save him gave her just enough hope. But even more so, this song is her redefining the word that she previously rejected. If no good deed was the breakdown of her worldview, here she crystallizes her realizations into something new. And with the structure, we come full circle. As one more time, Elphaba borrows someone else's words. Because it's Glinda who delivers the opening lines of the song, and when Elphaba joins her in the second verse, she mirrors Glinda's phrasing and structure, just as she first borrowed Morable's words in Act 1. And Elphaba, echoing the words of those around her, has acted almost like Oz's living conscience, testing its philosophy in real time. And here, the phrasing itself is, as always, very revealing. Of course, there's the double meaning describing both positive and permanent change, but the use of the word for also carries additional meaning. To act for something is to act in service of it, making good a noun here too. The work towards a better world that they now both share. But even in that beautiful resolution, there's something a little bittersweet here. Because, in a way, this is Elphaba abandoning her mission. She passes it on to Glinda, but Elphaba herself stops fighting and leaves Oz altogether. Whether the show intended it to come across this way, Elphaba does, in practice, abandon her cause and, by extension, the vulnerable people of Oz. We can read it as self-preservation. She's more than earned that. We can read it as her having faith that those in need will be cared for by Glinda. And still, it can feel not quite right. Personally, I'm not always convinced that Elphaba would just stop directly fighting for vulnerable populations so easily. The film could and probably will address this in some way. Hello, editing again. They make this even more explicit in the film, with Elphaba saying, "We can't let good be just a word." However, the film does also complicate her choice to leave here with the new song, No Place Like Home. The song expresses an important narrative purpose. Elphaba poses to herself a significant question. Why does she fight for a home that hates her? And her answer is that Oz isn't just the wizard and the bigots. Oz is everyone. Animals and herself and other minorities included. She sees animals trying to leave and, pointedly, argues against that choice and tries to rally them to stay, proclaiming that even when it's difficult, you have to fight for your home because it belongs to them all. This is the same Elphaba who, in both stage and film, later says to the wizard,
You want to know my heart's desire? It's to fight you till the day I die!
So her leaving so soon after that, explanations included, in some ways lands even more strangely in the context of this new song. There are rationalizations to make it work, but the problem is that the text of the film doesn't even reckon with the fact that Elphaba's exit directly contradicts her new song. It would even be an interesting moment to show this, but they never even show her acknowledging that song, those ideas, and expressing that she thinks she was wrong, and why she thinks so. Regardless, her motives remain the same. Just like Glinda tried to be at the end of Act 1, clumsily, a bit selfishly, it's Elphaba now who's trying to be strategic. Maybe, by her calculations, she can now do the most good by leaving. Elphaba leaves the stage immortalized as the Wicked Witch in the eyes of Oz. And if she had her way, Glinda would never tell them otherwise. And there's some serious dramatic irony in the fact that not only does Glinda not know that Elphaba's alive, but Elphaba doesn't know that the wizard and Morrible are eventually out of the picture. Would that give her enough space to try again? The show ends without us knowing. Elphaba's last act is self-preservation, it's exhaustion, and still, despite everything, hope. The good that Elphaba fought for, a kinder, more equitable Oz, is still a possibility. It just can't be her face behind it. At least, that's what she believes at the end of the show. At least for the foreseeable future. And in synthesizing the two women's relationship with the word and concept of good, we get the show's thesis. Both of them embody contradictions. Glinda is called good when she isn't, Elphaba is called wicked when she isn't. But that also doesn't make this a simple moral inversion where the bad was actually good and the good was actually bad. That's just more absolutist thinking. As though people are intrinsically one thing, and the only truly good people are saints and martyrs without any selfish motivation whatsoever. That's just not how people work. And there's a degree of selfishness that's just in all of us simply because our perspective is the first and primary lens we experience the world through. The tempting conclusion might be one about how the Wicked Witch was actually the purest good this whole time. And in some ways, she was. But tracking Elphaba's relationship with the word and the concept, it's messy too. We do Elphaba a disservice by treating her as just a paragon, the way that the Ozians do to Glinda. Elphaba had a range of motivations for wanting to do good. Genuine care and altruism.
It's so good for him. Why is he trembling?
Righteous outrage at her own othering.
He's not like every other professor. Maybe some of us are different.
A belief in her own exceptionalism.
A girl who is so superior.
Guilt that she was the cause of everything bad.
None of which would ever have happened if not for me.
All of which are very human. The point isn't that Elphaba was just a uniquely, innately better person than everyone around her. Her journey isn't meaningful because of that. It's meaningful because she kept choosing to wrestle with difficult questions about the world and herself. To make her out to just be a paragon diminishes her agency and diminishes the difficulty. It takes work to stand by your convictions. It takes work to introspect and question your motivations. It's easy to outsource morality to others, as ultimate goods and evils to either imitate or avoid. But people aren't symbols, and when we make them out to be one way or another, we lose sight of the harder truth. That living as people in the world, we all get both the privilege and responsibility to make imperfect choices as best we can. Both Glinda and Elphaba's endings arrive at a similar truth, that being good is lifelong work. But while Glinda's is something of a beginning, defining good for herself for the first time, Elphaba's is a resolution. And it makes sense. She's always been a little further ahead in her journey than Glinda. Elphaba has reckoned with morality, with guilt, with Oz's hypocrisy, and she's come out the other side with her convictions intact. The Ozian idea of good needs refining. Elphaba recognizes the false truth that everyone agrees on, and instead of fighting it, decides to use it. And to do so, she sacrifices one of her heart's desires, to be seen and loved by a home that might never be ready for her.
Promise me you won't try to clear my name.
No.
Promise.
That's fine. In giving up her name, she gives Oz the scapegoat it needs, the real good enemy to bring people together, in the hopes that maybe, through this, others in Oz might have the chance to live more freely. Glinda's proper fight has just begun, but for Elphaba, who's been fighting the whole show, this is acceptance. That's her growth. Acceptance that Oz isn't ready for her. Acceptance that she can't do everything, and that the world isn't hers alone to fix. That she has nothing to prove. And really, she never did.